Let's say you decide to make a small figure with your 3D pen. You will have to face the fact that this figure will eventually need a head. Even if the figure is a reasonable size, let's say 5 inches, the head will have to be rather small. And small things are hard. This is a macadamia nut. This is a hazelnut. And we need a head of this size. When we made our armature in the figure video, we used a wooden bead as a placeholder for the head. It is helpful to continue thinking of this size head as a bead. Beads have holes in them all the way through, which is super convenient for testing different heads on different bodies, holding heads while sculpting, and eventually in attaching them to the rest of the figure. I am making my bead channel with some super skinny knitting needles, but you can also use 2 pieces of any stiff wire. Using the second needle will make the bead hole more centered and also flat, so the head doesn't spin around while I sculpt it. It looks like a head-shaped pancake right now, but I will build up the sides from the center until it's rounded and helmet-shaped. I want this bead to be solid plastic, so I have some material to push around. Usually, you sculpt either by addition, as in adding material, like clay, or by subtraction, as in carving material away, as with wood carving, for instance. This is what I would call sculpting by redistribution, where you don't remove anything, or not much, and don't add anything either. Just push the plastic around until it is where you need it, as you will see in a minute. Let's see if the size feels right. It will do. Now let's clean it up so we can mess it up again. If you are wondering why on earth would we want to clean it up twice, the point of this smoothing is to get the bead as symmetrical as possible, from all sides and angles. Like right now, this corner is a bit more square looking than the other side. So I will rake it down with my Dremel tool, equipped with a cutting burr, until the shape is reasonably symmetrical and streamlined. Crooked beads make crooked heads. Now, let's do a bit of planning, so everything is where it needs to be. I will establish the middle of the head. And by that I mean the middle of the distance between the top of the head and the chin. And for good measure, I will also put in the vertical center line, so we can mark our main landmarks on it. Then I'm going to pencil in the eye sockets. Hopefully the same size and same distance from the center. The top edge of those will be our brow line, and halfway between the brow line and the chin will be the bottom of the nose. and the mouth will be just a hair above the middle of the rest of the face. Now let's establish the features. The heat tool will leave plastic strands and raised edges behind, so I will remove those, but I am not removing any significant amounts of material, just keeping things neat and hopefully still symmetrical. Always do the same step immediately on the other side of the face. I may not for the sake of this video, but it's a good habit to get into. Time to move the plastic where we need it. I will scrape some plastic downhill from the mouth level to the bottom of the nose. And then some more from the brow level downwards to create the nose. I find at this size of the head it's usually too much plastic if I try to add the nose with my pen. This is usually more than enough. The mouth starts with a little hill. The mouth mound slopes downhill to all sides, so build it up and it will leave you with enough material for the lips and what's going on in this area. I think I just divided the lips way too low because I'm trying to sculpt so the camera can see better than I can. But it's a fluid situation. I can always push it higher as I go. The eyes are the windows to the soul. As the saying suggests, the eyes are what determines the personality of the critter you are making. Eye socket area has a lot of anatomy going on. That would be better discussed when we are making a bigger head than a nut size. Not much room here to worry about more than the very basic shapes of eyelids and eyeballs. Now that the main features are established, it's time to start really sculpting. I have been at it for a while, and still all the features look a little exaggerated and oversized, which is what I normally prefer, but this is supposed to be somewhat realistic female to match the body I'm planning to use, so I better cut everything a bit smaller and softer. Especially the nose is still way too wide. I may actually have to remove bits of plastic, which is a slightly annoying process. The sculpting takes a while, so I'm not going to make you sit through the entire thing. Just a few helpful notes. I am using the needle-pointed tip for most of the sculpting process and cleaning it often on a piece of wood wrapped in several layers of paper towels. As the head progresses, I use more and more just the very tip of the tool. Occasionally, the head gets so messy I do need to sand it a bit here and there to see where things are going and what remains to be done. You can fuss with heads pretty endlessly, but at some point you decide you had enough and it's done. Perhaps this one needs a bit more sanding, because that is never done. But let's leave that for later and move on. I always check the size of the head against my scale chart at this point to see if the back of the head is still big enough and add more plastic to it if needed. This one lost a tiny bit of brain, but not so much I couldn't fix it while I do the hair. Let's see how it fits the body. Looks appropriate. I want to use the hairdo to show you one more fun technique that is useful for way more than just hair. First of all, we'll do some stress-free hairdo planning. This is a piece of kneaded eraser, and I am going to make it into a kind of little pancake and approach the hairdo as if it was a hat. This allows me to try a few options to see what looks good on her before I commit to one final version of things. I will eventually need to reproduce this part in plastic, so I need to know what shape I'm after. Adding this part to the head is a scary proposition. If I screw up and mess up the head, I could waste all this time and effort that I just put into making the face. So here is where this helpful little masking technique comes in. I will use a piece of masking tape to protect the area I will be covering with the new plastic layer, so it doesn't stick to the actual head, but at the same time it is custom made to fit this head exactly. I will burnish it so it's not too bumpy to draw on with the pen. And I can even draw on the masking tape in pencil to make the outline of the hairline I'm planning to make. Now I can cover the wig area without stressing about losing the face if something goes wrong. She became a bit of a cone head in the process, so we'll need to redistribute the top of the head plastic to the back of the skull, which could use it, as I mentioned earlier. You can texture the hair straight with a pen or with any of your heat tool tips as you see fit, until you are happy with the hairdo. Now for the slightly scary part. Will it come off? Sometimes if you add the plastic past the midpoint of the round shape, it gets locked in, sort of like an undercut in mold making. It's not budging, not a good sign. We'll need some tool to get a grip. And perhaps a spatula or knife to loosen it. Yay! Here it comes. Now I'll remove the tape. And we are ready to try her wig on. And check if the addition didn't make the head too big for the body. I am not a miniaturist by nature, so heads that are size of nuts drive me nuts. Bigger heads would be way easier to make, and I would go completely differently about it. But that will have to be another video. In the meantime, here are 2 videos on how to get started making this figure. And in the next one, I will show you how to put it all together. So until then, go and make something.